The next speaker will be our party's Vice Chairperson, Comrade Eloisa Juana Rule.
Yeah, better known as Ella Rule. Nobody can pronounce Eloisa outside Spain and Latin America. But my remit today is to talk about what the revolution, October Revolution, did for women in particular. And I don't know, I expect everybody here knows that from the very first day following the revolution, all the laws that made women subject to men were instantly abolished. Women were given equal civic rights, equal family rights, their equal right to divorce, to determine their children's education, etc., etc. So all the unfair laws scrapped there and then. But legal rights alone don't give social equality. Much, much more was needed. And that which was needed was systematically introduced over a period of years, and as fast as it was possible to do it. The most important factor in the emancipation of women is their reintroduction into social production, bringing them out of the social isolation in the home, where they had traditionally been confined as domestic slaves of their husbands. Capitalism had already started this process, but only slowly and partially and at tremendous cost to the women themselves. Socialism, however, has every incentive to accelerate and complete the process as the building up of a socialist economy that will be capable of producing one day enough material and cultural products to satisfy all the needs of all workers. Well, to be able to do this, it requires all hands on deck. There's no room for people's talents and potential to be frittered away on domestic chores to the exclusion of all else. So the doors of employment were put open wide to women, and their number in the workforce increased. For instance, between 1929 and 1937, the numbers increased from 3 million to over 7 million. And by 1941, women were 45% of the workforce. Needless to say, there was no capitalist country which was anywhere near that figure. Of course, working women have independent financial means. They no longer have to put up with abusive family relationships. So women in the Soviet Union were for the first time introduced also into jobs that had for centuries been considered totally beyond their pretty little heads. They became engineers, they became doctors, they became train drivers. Of course, everybody also remembers Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space. In 1940, 4,000 Soviet women worked as engine drivers. And guess what? There wasn't a single other female engine driver anywhere in the world. So the Soviet women engineers and technical workers went from 3,600 in number in 1930 to 170,000 by 1940. Well, one of the hardest bastions for women to breach is politics. In the Soviet Union, a very determined start was made. In 1922, only 5 women were elected to the Central Committee of the Soviet government. The number in 1937 was 189. And in 1946, it was 277, 21% of the whole. And most important, of course, for enabling women to make their contribution was the setting up of nurseries, kindergartens, after-school clubs, laundries, public dining rooms, providing high-quality services, either free or extremely cheap, below cost price. Because how can you participate on an equal basis with men if you are loaded down with the household chores? So it's a social provision had to be made and was made for women to be able to blaze ahead. So Soviet women were freed to blaze a trail that slowly women in capitalist countries have to some extent been able to follow. When my grandmother was young, she was trained as a teacher. She was an extremely talented teacher. But the minute she got married, she was, by the law, not permitted to work as a teacher. Oh, how things have changed. And thank you, Soviet Union. Thank you. Thank you for the Soviet ladies. Thank you for the other socialist ladies all over the world who have helped us to move forward towards equality. And we look forward to the socialist revolution in other countries, including Britain, where instead of having to pay a fortune to be able to go out to work, instead of having to work 90 hours a week in order to do everything that needs to be done, we're actually going to have the same sort of facilities that are accorded to socialist women everywhere. Thank you very much.
It would interest you to know that Comrade Ella Rule is the editor of a book that our party is associated with the publication of, Marxism and the Emancipation of Women, and you would be well advised from me, at least, to secure a copy of it. Anybody who is interested in the question of emancipation of women, it really is a summary of what has happened under socialism to women in the Soviet Union, in the DPRK, in a number of other socialist countries, and of course providing it with a basis in Marxist-Leninist theory, the thesis of Engels and Marx on the question of emancipation of women. So I hope you wouldn't mind me plugging this thing to you today. Thank you, Ella.